I still remember the night everything changed. Even now, whenever I hear a soft knock on a hotel door, or a cabin wall creaking in the darkness, my mind drifts back to that voyage aboard the Ocean Majesty. What happened during those 10 days at sea wasn't something I had planned for. And it certainly wasn't something I expected. At the time, I believed I was simply taking a vacation. Looking back now, I realize I was sailing directly toward a chapter of my life that would alter everything I thought I knew. About trust, loss, and second chances. It was well after midnight when it happened. The Ocean Majesty was silent except for the distant hum of the engines beneath the waves. Most passengers were asleep, and I had been lying in bed staring at the ceiling, struggling with the same loneliness that had followed me throughout the entire cruise. Then the knocking started. At first, I thought I imagined it. 3 slow knocks, then silence. My eyes immediately shifted toward the clock on the nightstand. 12:17 a.m. A nervous feeling settled into my stomach. Nobody should have been visiting my cabin at that hour. I waited. A few seconds later, the knocking came again. Soft past odd. Almost hesitant. My heart began beating faster as I slipped out of bed and wrapped a light robe around myself. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely. Another part couldn't resist the curiosity building inside me. Slowly, I walked toward the door and looked through the peephole. The moment I saw who was standing outside, I froze. It was the captain. For a second, I genuinely wondered if I was dreaming. What was the captain doing outside my cabin after midnight? My pulse quickened. As I unlocked the door and pulled it open, he stood there looking unusually serious, yet there was something else in his expression too. Something uncertain, something almost nervous. "Captain?" I asked. For a moment, he didn't answer, then a faint smile appeared on his face. "Sorry for disturbing you this late, Isabella." His voice was calm, but I could tell something was bothering him. "Is everything okay?" I asked immediately. The captain glanced down the empty corridor before looking back at me. I was hoping we could talk. That answer only created more questions. At nearly midnight? In my cabin, why? For several seconds, neither of us moved. The corridor remained completely empty. The only sound came from the distant ocean outside. Then he surprised me. "This probably isn't the best idea," he said quietly. But I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation earlier. My stomach tightened. Our conversation? We had spoken briefly during sunset on the observation deck, but nothing that seemed important enough to bring him to my cabin in the middle of the night. At least that's what I thought. "You've had a difficult year, haven't you?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. Not because he was wrong, because somehow he had noticed. Most passengers saw a smiling woman, enjoying a luxury cruise. The captain seemed to see everything I was trying to hide. For several seconds, I didn't know what to say. Finally, I stepped aside. "You should probably come in." The captain hesitated briefly before entering. As soon as the door closed behind him, a strange feeling settled over the room. Not fear, not discomfort. Something else. Something I couldn't quite explain. The captain walked toward the balcony and stared out at the moonlit ocean, stretching endlessly beyond the glass. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then he turned toward me, and for the first time since opening the door, I noticed how tired he looked. Not physically tired, emotionally tired. Like someone who had spent a very long time carrying something heavy alone. "I know this is unusual," he said softly, "but sometimes it's easier talking to a stranger." I leaned against the edge of the couch. "Are we still strangers?" For the first time that night, a genuine smile appeared on his face. Maybe not. Something about that answer made my heart beat a little faster. "My name is Isabella Hart. And when I boarded the Ocean Majesty, I was carrying far more luggage than the 2 suitcases that followed me onto the ship. 11 months earlier, my husband of nearly 30 years had passed away after a sudden illness. One day he was sitting across from me at breakfast, complaining about the weather, and a few weeks later he was gone. The silence he left behind was louder than anything I had ever experienced. Friends tried to help. Family members checked in constantly. Everyone told me that time would heal the pain. The truth was that time only taught me how to hide it better. The cruise had been my sister's idea. She insisted I needed a change of scenery. According to her, sitting alone in the same house every day wasn't helping anyone. After weeks of persuasion, I finally agreed. I booked a luxury voyage through the Mediterranean, convinced that fresh air and beautiful destinations might help me feel something other than grief. For the first few days, I mostly kept to myself. The ocean majesty was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers decorated the grand atrium. Elegant restaurants stretched across multiple decks. Every evening brought new entertainment, live music, and extravagant events. Passengers wandered the ship smiling, laughing, and celebrating. Yet despite the beauty surrounding me, I felt strangely disconnected from it all. I attended dinners alone. I watched sunsets alone. I spent long hours sitting on the observation deck with a book resting in my lap while my thoughts drifted elsewhere. I noticed that, the captain said quietly. I looked up. Noticed what? The way you always sat alone during sunset. I blinked. You noticed that? He nodded. Every evening. Something about that answer surprised me more than it should have. Out of thousands of passengers aboard the ship, he had noticed me. Not because I was loud. Not because I stood out. Simply because he had been paying attention. For the next hour, we talked quietly while the ship sailed through the darkness. We spoke about grief, loneliness, travel, regrets, and all the things people normally avoid discussing with strangers. Yet somehow the conversation felt effortless. Every time I thought it should become awkward, it didn't. Every time I expected silence, another topic appeared naturally. For the first time in nearly a year, I felt understood. And judging by the look in his eyes, I wasn't the only one. Eventually, he stood and walked toward the door. For a moment, neither of us moved. Neither seemed eager for the conversation to end. Then he placed his hand on the door handle and looked back at me. Thank you for listening. I smiled. Thank you for knocking. A small laugh escaped him. Then his expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to notice. As if he suddenly remembered something. Something important. Something troubling. For a brief moment, his eyes drifted toward the cabin door, toward the hallway outside. And when he looked back at me, the warmth in his expression had been replaced by concern. It happened so quickly that I almost missed it almost. What is it? I asked. The captain hesitated. Then he forced a smile. Nothing. But I knew it wasn't nothing. And as I watched him disappear into the corridor moments later, I couldn't shake the feeling that his unexpected visit wasn't the only reason he'd come to my cabin that night. Because deep down, I had a feeling he hadn't told me everything, and I had absolutely no idea that the secret he was hiding was about to pull both of us into a mystery neither of us saw coming. The next morning, I convinced myself I had imagined the strange look on the captain's face when he left my cabin. After all, it was late. We had both been tired. Maybe I was simply reading too much into a perfectly normal conversation. Yet despite my attempts to dismiss it, the memory stayed with me throughout breakfast, through my morning walk on the upper deck, and even during the afternoon excursion. When our ship docked along the Italian coastline, something had changed, not only because of our conversation, because for the first time since my husband had died, I found myself looking forward to tomorrow. That realization scared me more than I wanted to admit. For nearly a year, I had built walls around myself. Grief had become familiar. Loneliness had become routine. Letting someone get close again felt dangerous. Yet every time I remembered the captain's smile, or the way he listened without judgment, I felt those walls weakening. The following evening, I returned to my usual spot on the observation deck. Just before sunset, the ocean stretched endlessly beneath a sky painted with shades of orange and gold. A cool breeze carried the scent of salt water across the deck. I sat alone, pretending to read, while secretly wondering if I might see him again. I told myself I wasn't waiting for him, but I was almost 30 minutes past before I heard footsteps approaching. My heart immediately betrayed me. When I looked up, there he was, the captain. This time he wasn't wearing his formal uniform jacket. Instead, he looked more relaxed, more like an ordinary man than the person responsible for thousands of lives aboard the ship. Mind if I join you? He asked. I smiled. I was beginning to think you wouldn't. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Really? I immediately regretted my honesty. He laughed softly before taking the empty seat beside me. For the next hour, we talked as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. He told me stories about storms he had navigated, distant countries he had visited, and the strange things passengers sometimes did during cruises. I shared stories about my life before my husband passed away, about raising my family, and about the dreams I had quietly abandoned over the years. What surprised me most wasn't how easy the conversation felt. It was how much I wanted it to continue. Several times our hands almost touched on the armrest between us. Neither of us mentioned it. Yet both of us noticed. As darkness settled across the ocean, a comfortable silence formed between us. Then I asked a question, the same question that had been bothering me since the night before. Why did you really come to my cabin? For the first time all evening, his smile faded. He looked away, toward the dark water below. For several moments, he didn't answer. I told you, he finally said. No, I replied quietly. You told me part of the truth. The captain sighed, and that reaction immediately told me I was right. There are some things happening aboard this ship, he said carefully. What kind of things? Again, hesitation. Again, that same troubled expression, the one I'd seen outside my cabin. I can't discuss details. My curiosity instantly intensified. Why not? Because I'm still trying to understand them myself. That answer only created more questions. Before I could ask another one, his radio suddenly crackled. A crew member's voice came through. The captain listened carefully. His expression immediately hardened. I need to go. What happened? It's probably nothing. The problem was that he didn't sound convinced. Within seconds he was already walking away, leaving me alone with more questions than answers. For the next 2 days, our paths crossed only briefly. Whenever I saw him, he seemed distracted, preoccupied. Something clearly had his attention. Crew members appeared unusually busy as well. Security officers moved throughout the ship more frequently than before. Twice I noticed crew members speaking in hushed voices before immediately stopping when passengers approached. Most people aboard the Ocean Majesty seemed oblivious. I wasn't. Something felt wrong. Then came another strange discovery. On the 4th evening after our midnight conversation, I was returning to my cabin when I noticed a woman standing near the captain's private corridor. She wasn't crew. I was certain of that. She appeared to be a passenger, elegant, beautiful, and visibly upset. What caught my attention wasn't her presence. It was what happened next. The captain emerged from a nearby door. The moment she saw him, she grabbed his arm, not romantically, desperately, as if she was demanding answers. I couldn't hear their conversation from where I stood, but I could see their expressions. The woman looked angry. The captain looked concerned. A few moments later, security personnel appeared and quietly escorted her away. The entire incident lasted less than 2 minutes. Yet it left me completely unsettled. Who was she? What did she want? And why had security intervened? That night, sleep became impossible. My thoughts kept returning to the mysterious woman and to the captain's behavior. By now, it was obvious he was hiding something. The question was why. The next evening brought another surprise. I had just finished dinner when a folded note appeared beside my plate. I immediately looked around. No one seemed to be watching. Slowly, I opened it. Inside were only 6 handwritten words. Meet me tonight. Deck 12. Alone, no signature, no explanation, nothing. My pulse immediately quickened. Every instinct told me this was connected to the captain, and every instinct also told me it might be a terrible idea. Yet as I stared at those 6 words, curiosity began overpowering caution. Because deep down, I knew one thing. Whatever secret existed aboard the Ocean Majesty, I was getting closer to it. And I had a feeling that, once I discovered the truth, nothing about this voyage would ever feel the same again. For nearly an hour, I stared at the note sitting on the small desk inside my cabin. Every logical part of my mind told me to ignore it. I was a passenger on a luxury cruise, not a detective investigating some mysterious secret. Yet the more I tried convincing myself to stay away, the stronger my curiosity became. Ever since the captain appeared outside my cabin after midnight, strange things had been happening around me. The nervous look in his eyes, the upset woman near the private corridor, the unusual activity among the crew, and now an anonymous note asking me to come alone to Deck 12. None of it made sense, and unfortunately for me, I've never been very good at ignoring unanswered questions. At exactly 11 o'clock that night, I left my cabin and quietly made my way toward Deck 12. Most passengers had already gone to sleep. The ship felt completely different after dark. During the day, the Ocean Majesty was filled with music, conversation, and laughter. At night, the endless hallways seemed almost eerie. The soft lighting cast long shadows across the polished floors, while the distant sound of the ocean echoed through the steel structure of the ship. When I finally reached Deck 12, I immediately noticed how empty it was. The upper observation area was normally crowded during sunset hours, but now only the wind occupied the space. Waves crashed gently against the ship below while moonlight reflected across the dark water. For several moments, I wondered if someone was playing a prank on me. Then I heard a voice. "Thank you for coming." I turned instantly. The captain stepped from a shadowed area near the observation lounge. My heart skipped a beat. "You sent the note?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes." I folded my arms. "You know, most people would simply call instead of sending mysterious messages." A faint smile appeared on his face. "I wasn't sure you'd come otherwise." Despite the seriousness of the situation, I found myself smiling back. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The ocean stretched endlessly around us while the wind tugged gently at my hair. Standing there beneath the stars felt strangely intimate despite the distance between us. Finally, I broke the silence. "Who was the woman?" The smile disappeared from his face immediately. For several seconds, he simply stared out at the water, then he sighed. "I was hoping you didn't see that." I did. Another pause followed. "What happened?" The captain leaned against the railing. "Her name is Victoria." The name meant nothing to me. "Who is she?" "A passenger, clearly." He looked down briefly before continuing. "She's convinced someone aboard this ship is following her." I blinked. "What?" "She believes she's being watched." I stared at him. "Do you believe her?" The captain hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "At first I didn't," he admitted. "And now?" His eyes met mine. "Now I'm not so sure." A chill ran through me despite the warm night air. For the next several minutes, he explained what little he could. Over the previous week, several unusual incidents had been reported aboard the ship. Personal belongings had disappeared, and then mysteriously reappeared in different locations. Certain cabin access records didn't match crew schedules. Small things, strange things, nothing dangerous, yet enough to concern him. What does this have to do with Victoria? The captain looked toward the dark ocean. "She claims she saw someone entering restricted crew areas." I frowned. And according to ship records, nobody should have been there. That answer only deepened the mystery. For the first time since boarding the Ocean Majesty, I genuinely felt uneasy. The captain must have noticed. "Don't worry, that's easy for you to say." His expression softened. "I won't let anything happen to you." The moment those words left his mouth, the atmosphere between us changed. Neither of us looked away. Neither of us spoke. For several seconds, the mystery surrounding the ship seemed to disappear completely. All I could see were his eyes. All I could hear was the sound of the waves below, and all I could think about was how close he suddenly felt. "I don't know why I trust you," I admitted quietly. A small smile appeared on his face. "Maybe because I trust you too." Something about that answer made my heart race. Not because it was romantic, because it felt honest. And after everything I had experienced during the previous year, honesty had become rare. The captain moved slightly closer, not enough to cross any boundaries, just enough that I became aware of his presence in a way I hadn't before. "You know," he said softly, "when I first saw you sitting alone during sunset, I thought you looked like someone carrying the weight of the world." I laughed quietly. Was it that obvious? To me it was. For a moment, neither of us mentioned the mystery. Neither of us mentioned Victoria. Instead, we really talked about fears, regrets, second chances, dreams we'd abandoned years earlier. The conversation flowed so naturally that I completely lost track of time. Until his radio suddenly crackled again. The captain immediately reached for it. His expression changed the moment he heard the message. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. The concern I had seen before returned instantly. "I need to go." My stomach tightened. "What's wrong?" He looked genuinely conflicted, as if he wanted to tell me the truth, but couldn't. Then he said something that surprised me. "Promise me something." "What?" "If anyone contacts you, especially about me, come directly to me first." A cold feeling spread through my chest.
What does that mean?
Again, hesitation, no clear answer. It means things are more complicated than they appear. Before I could ask another question, he turned and started walking away, then suddenly stopped. For a brief moment he looked back at me. The moonlight reflected across his face, and the expression in his eyes was unlike anything I had seen before. Concern, affection, and fear. Not fear for himself. Fear for me. That realization stayed with me long after he disappeared. But what happened the following morning would change everything, because when I returned to my cabin after breakfast, I found another note waiting beneath my door. This one contained only a single sentence. "The captain is lying to you," and beneath those 5 words was something even more disturbing. A photograph. A photograph showing the captain standing beside a woman I had never seen before. A woman wearing what looked suspiciously like a wedding ring. The moment I saw it, my heart dropped. Because for the first time since meeting him, I realized there was a very real possibility that the biggest secret aboard the Ocean Majesty wasn't the mystery he had been investigating. It was the captain himself. For several long seconds, I simply stared at the photograph. My hands felt cold. My heart pounded against my chest. The captain stood beside an attractive brunette woman, and from the angle of the picture, they appeared unusually close. What immediately caught my attention wasn't the woman herself. It was the ring on her finger. A wedding ring. The anonymous note echoed inside my mind. "The captain is lying to you." I must have looked at that photograph 100 times that morning. Every possibility ran through my head. Maybe the woman was his wife. Maybe he had been manipulating me from the beginning. Maybe everything he had told me during our late-night conversations had been nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. The more I thought about it, the worse I felt. Not because we had started a relationship. We hadn't, but because I had begun trusting him. And after losing my husband, trust wasn't something I gave easily. For the rest of the day, I avoided him. Whenever I saw crew members preparing for evening events, I walked the opposite direction. Whenever I thought about visiting the observation deck, I changed my mind. I told myself it didn't matter, yet somehow it did. Much more than I wanted to admit. Late that evening, another knock came at my cabin door. The sound instantly made my stomach tighten. This time, however, I knew who it was before opening it. The captain. When I opened the door, he immediately noticed something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I held up the photograph. The change in his expression was immediate. Confusion, then recognition, then frustration. "You got one too?" My eyebrows lifted. "One too?" He nodded. Without another word, he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Inside was another photograph. This one showed me, standing beside a male passenger during a shore excursion. The angle had been deliberately chosen to make us appear intimate. We weren't. In reality, the man had simply asked me for directions. Whoever took the picture had manipulated the entire situation. The same person sent this to me. The captain said. Suddenly everything became clear. I wasn't merely leaving notes. Someone was actively trying to create misunderstandings, trying to turn people against each other, trying to isolate us. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then I finally asked the question that mattered most. The woman in the picture. The captain sighed. "She's my sister." I blinked. "What?" "My younger sister." He shook his head. The photo was taken 3 years ago during a family gathering. I stared at him, then back at the photograph, then at him again. Slowly, embarrassment replaced suspicion. The captain noticed immediately. A small smile appeared. "You thought she was my wife," I groaned. "You can laugh later." His smile widened. "I probably will." For the first time all day, I found myself laughing as well. The tension disappeared almost instantly. Yet the mystery remained. Who was doing this? And why? The answer arrived sooner than either of us expected. The following morning, security identified the person responsible. Victoria, the same passenger who claimed someone was following her, the same woman who had been arguing with the captain, the same woman who had been at the center of everything from the beginning. As it turned out, she wasn't being watched. She was the one watching everyone else. For months, she had become obsessed with uncovering scandals wherever she traveled. She secretly photographed passengers, manipulated situations, spread rumors, and created dramas simply because she enjoyed the attention that followed. The captain's investigation had uncovered dozens of incidents linked directly to her. By the time the ship reached its final destination, she had been removed from the Voyage and turned over to local authorities. Just like that, the mystery was over. The secret was finally revealed. And yet something far more important remained unfinished. The captain and me. On the final evening of the cruise, I found myself standing once again on the observation deck. The same place where everything had started. The ocean stretched endlessly beneath a sky filled with stars. A cool breeze moved across the deck, and beside me stood the man who had somehow changed my life during a journey that was supposed to help me escape it. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. We simply watched the horizon together. Finally, he broke the silence. "You know, I almost didn't knock on your door that night." I smiled. "Really?" He nodded. "I stood outside your cabin for nearly 5 minutes trying to decide whether it was a terrible idea." I laughed softly. "It probably was. Probably." For a moment, we simply looked at each other. Then his expression became more serious. "When this cruise ends tomorrow," he stopped. For the first time since meeting him, he looked genuinely nervous. My heart immediately sped up. "When this cruise ends," he continued, "I'd like to see you again." The words were simple, yet they meant everything. For months after my husband's death, I had convinced myself that chapter of my life was over. That love belonged to my past. That happiness was something I would only remember. Standing there beside the captain, I finally realized how wrong I had been. Life wasn't asking me to forget my past. It was asking me to keep living. And maybe, just maybe, to open my heart again. A smile slowly appeared across my face. "I'd like that too." The relief in his expression made me laugh. For a man responsible for navigating an entire cruise ship across the ocean, he suddenly looked remarkably vulnerable. As the stars shimmered above us, and the ocean majesty continued its journey through the darkness, the captain gently reached for my hand. This time, neither of us pulled away, because the voyage that had begun with loneliness, grief, and unanswered questions was ending with something neither of us expected: hope. And sometimes, that's the greatest adventure of all.